Hello, all. Welcome to another edition of the Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 203 for July 18, 2025. Today's main topic, low code high performance. I'm giving you that signaling that's the topic because there's a slide later on where I'd like to get your feedback on your favorite high performance hints. And so you can be thinking about that till we get there. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plant and App, and this is, again, Low Code Campfire. It's a weekly event around here at Plant and App. We get together and talk with our community, explain some things that are going on, but mostly share techniques and challenges and experiences, things that you're doing with Plant and App, and maybe you could use some assistance with or want to show off, any of that. So it's all skill levels welcome event. We record all of these and put them on YouTube, which you can get to with youtube.com/plantandapp. We run this agenda. We say hello and do introductions because we're a friendly group, and then spend the hour going around the campfire. We always do first call on anything you've submitted in advance, which I don't think there's anything submitted in advance today. And then we'll look at various things like contributions to our campfire website, things that are going on within the community. And then after an hour or so, we drop into our Afterglow segment. That's where we turn off the recording and hang out for a few more minutes off the record. So do engage with us, jump in, show and tell, use the chat window, however you'd like to do it. You can submit questions and topics in advance. That's the way to get things to the front of the list. And so you can use this QR code, or you can just email us at support@plantandapp.com. Hello, all.
Hello, good
Oh,
morning.
good morning.
Good morning.
Nice group this morning. Nobody new, so no introductions are required. Anybody come with a first call item?
I've got something.
Hey, Don.
Is there, let's see, I've got an API and I was thinking about splitting it up so that the fundamental items that needed to get done before sending back a response to I've got a mobile app that's asking for something. And what I was thinking of doing was just doing all of the work that I need to do in line before sending a response back to the app. And the one item that I'm concerned about, because I don't know about the timing of it, is sending an email. So one of the things in the app is at the end of the process, I notify the client that this just happened. And I'm wondering if the email process potentially could take a long time. Right now, it seems to be very, very fast, but I'm not sure exactly what it's doing. Does it put the request in a queue and then DNN deals with it on its own, or does it wait until the mail actually goes out?
So our send email action sends an SMTP email. So however long your SMTP server, whatever the variances or vagaries of that, um, you could certainly run into timing issues, right?
Ah, okay.
Um, so there's a couple of things. First of all, you mentioned the pattern of putting things into a queue, and like putting something like that into a queue and letting a different process handle it, like an automation. And I think there's if you look up the topic queue email on our YouTube channel, there's a whole there's different discussions about how to implement something like that. Uh, on the YouTube channel down here, this is the best place to search. And queue email, there's low code number 75. That's the queue pattern where we talked about that, but it's probably been talked about in other places as well. And sure, let me put that link on the chat just for fun. Um, Got to find the chat anyway. Haven't done that yet today.
So the
Um,
here is that I would in the API, instead of actually calling send mail, I would follow the methodology that you've got um, in the video and do that, and then I wouldn't have to worry about the time that potentially could take for a call to SMTP to return before I can return to
per,
my mobile.
per, oh, and then, so in that pattern, essentially what you do is to write a record to a table someplace, and then where there's enough information in that table to signal something else to go off and do the work. So it would take the amount of time necessary to write the information into a table. There's another pattern. There's an action, execute actions asynchronously, which is another possibility for you if it were something even longer. So execute asynchronously, if you have it licensed, will let you whatever actions you add here, they don't get done within the context of wherever you're running. They get done um, in a totally separate context, and
Oh, okay.
um, so they just they just fire off and run, and so that probably would be the slam dunk easiest way to do if it's send email or one or two other actions, you could do that. The thing about the nice thing about that QEmail design pattern, putting things into a table, is it sets you up to know what's gone out, to be able to respond to errors if something goes wrong in the SMTP, versus if the send email action doesn't work, now you've got an error handling or potentially if you need to make sure that the email goes out, what do you do? So there's a couple of different ways to handle it. Anyone else have a favorite?
Well, I'm using that Q email quite successfully, and it does, like you said, give you the ability to see what's gone out statuses and then take corrective action as necessary. So probably a bit more work. So depending upon your requirements, Don, it may or may not be worth it, but it's worked out quite well for me.
It sounds like it would be just a good learning exercise because there's often times when you need to do that kind of a thing. So just having that mechanism in place so all of your emails get queued and then it also you have one place for error handling. I like that too.
And another nice, I mean, what kind of implicit in what you just said, the idea that if you use that throughout your application, now you have a standardized way of handling emails. So even though emailing might happen in 8 different places in your application, it's all being handled by a central mechanism, gives you the opportunity to put a footer on everything or do additional tracking or processing or whatever. So it's a nice pattern.
That's true. But the asynchronous execute asynchronously sounds like a real I'll say as I'll say quick and dirty, I guess, but it sounds like a great way of taking care of this in the same app that I'm building. Just a simpler way of just putting it all in line right there, and no
Right.
place to have to go hunt and nothing else to build. But I'll try it both ways. At least start
Good.
with the asynchronous. I think that's where I'd go first, and then just throw everything that I've already built, just move all those actions into the asynchronous action because there's several things that I don't have to be doing um, before I tell the mobile that everything's great.
Exactly. And that's really the probably the primary benefit of execute asynchronous. If you've got something that's going to be long running, but you don't want the user, whether it's in your case, you're talking about an API, you want to return back very quickly, but if it was a form, you could, and they click a button, you can do the quick things that the user needs to see quickly and then fire off some other things to happen in the background. So it's a nice tool to have in the bag.
There's one thing that has to happen. I'm making a server call. It's a gateway type of a thing where, we're trying to collect some money. And so the app says, okay, I've got it this far. Then it calls me, and then I have to go back to the merchant gateway and say, okay, make it official, go do it, and then wait for it to come back saying it's all done before I can go back to the mobile. So that much has to happen, and I have to wait for that. So I'll just do that in line. But then as soon as that's done and I get the response back that everything's great, then all the other steps, which includes the sending the notification and creating a receipt and all the other things that I'm doing, all of that can happen asynchronously, and I'll just jump uh, send back to the app that it's done. So that's
Great.
cool. Thank you. That's great.
Absolutely. Someone else for first call? Or Don, you're not excluded. Anyone else, another first call?
Hey Dale, Jerry here. How are you doing?
Hey, doing great.
Good, good. I'm looking more for from our experts on our panel here, a programming technique or a way to handle something. And I'm going to describe it as I have a particular website, a Plant and App website that the people that visit it do not log in. So that's step one. And on sometimes they will pass in a query string with their ID number, and there's some action forms and some things happening in the background that allows me to control the content on certain pages based on which ID got passed in. That works just wonderfully fine. Here comes my question for this panel. I have a page, a DNN page, that I would like to have come and go, hide and show based on that query string variable or any other variable that I might have dug out of a database somewhere or set a session or something. So, you got a particular page that it's hidden or it's not visible based on roles because they're not logged in. Nothing like that is happening. But does anybody know how to control DNN's pages, their menus, outside of using the user roles by some type of switch that I could flip? And so to summarize it down and bring it down easy, let's just say if the query string ID equals 1, this page is visible. And if it's not visible.
And you
Got
want it
any
in the
idea how to
menu.
attack that?
You want
Say
it
again,
in
Dale?
you want it in the menu, is that correct?
Yes, it's just a DNM page. It's setting in the menu. And normally one would use user roles based on who's logged in to display the page or not display the page. In this particular case, no one ever logs into this website. So the only switch I have is this query string called ID coming in. And I would just like to be able to have that page appear or not appear.
Is
So go ahead,
is
please.
there a page refresh that happens after you determine? The reason why I'm asking is that you can go into the database and set menu in menu to be on for that page. Leave the permissions for that its page is public, but not in the menu. If that's what you're trying to do is to show it in the menu, but that would
I
only happen if it's then refreshed because when you're loading the page, um, well, maybe that would show up in the page in the
so
menu.
so Don, I thought about that, and my problem is if I turn that switch off or on, that's affecting every person in the universe that comes to the website. In
Ah,
this
that's true.
particular case, if ID equals 1, I want them to see the page. But if ID equals 2, I don't want them to see the page. So it's got to be flexible based on some variable that I give them.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I've got myself backed in a corner at a limitation of DNN. It'd be awesome if in DNN, if in the menu properties or on the page properties, there was a place to insert a conditional token. And that would just be awesome. But since DNN doesn't organically do it that way, I'm looking for a way to jerry rig it and come around behind the door and fix that.
So we have our menu builder, and I was trying to see if I don't see that it's conditional on a token. Um, it allows tokens, but my, yeah.
It allows
That's
tokens as a menu item.
um, that's a good question.
Because that would be the solution, is to just set the token to be blank or something like that. And then when the ID is 1 or whatever your condition is, then set the token to be
Yeah.
the link, the title and the hypertext and the hyperlink.
Yes.
Mark has his hand up, just so you know.
Well, Mark, please jump in here. Come on, help.
I'm pretty sure that you could accomplish this with JavaScript. If you had something sitting on the page like a form that saw the presence or not presence of the ID in the query string, it could display none on your menu item.
Okay. That's very interesting approach. Mark, if you could imagine, there would be, you know, across this top row on this, and this is a stock DNN menu, there might be 4 pages. And the one particular page that I'm having a concern would be hidden 99% of the time. So it's there, but it's not being shown. And then somebody passes in a query string of ID equals 1. I want that page to light up. And but that query string might be a session variable, and people are moving around the pages. So if somebody goes to one of those other 3 pages, the menu, when it refreshes, that page might reappear or it might disappear based on that. So that's why this has become a challenge. And I don't want to eat up a lot of our daylight on this show for that, because it's kind of a DNN limitation more so than a plant to app um, amenity.
Dale, did you uh in the on this page you're on right now under menu items on in the right-hand pane, um did you yeah, edit that? I don't know if you looked at this already. I apologize if you did, but just click the edit.
No, I was trying to edit it and I don't see.
Oh, oh, it
I'm
didn't.
sorry. I guess maybe it lets you edit the permissions that it's associated with, perhaps. But but
That's not it.
edit doesn't do anything.
It doesn't? Is that your site's on 127, I'm guessing?
It is.
Huh.
Uh,
I get a whole form when I click that button.
what version are you on?
Yeah, I'm still the site that I'm using is still 126.
Uh, right.
And in that form, there's a visibility setting, and one of the options under visibility setting is execute token. I don't know what it does, but
Hmm.
Probably returns true or false, and
Yeah.
uh, the I think Nav XP, this menu builder, might get you where you want to go, but it also is illustrating we have some problems with our current version. So, but let's bring up a 126 and see if I can find what Patrick is showing. Because if it can be token based, then you can just simply, if you set a session or something like that, then you'd be able
Right.
to carry on through that. So the product is called Nav XP, which I think you can drop on your onto a page. We by default, our page builder pages have Nav XP or an instance of it loaded on the page, and so that's how
as a skin object.
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Patrick, I still miss you every day.
Mm.
So that when we go into edit mode, the manage shows up in the menu, and then that's the thing that allows that. So we probably have to be permission based. Yes, that's what we do, and we want to add a profile and drag something onto here. And then here's the one that is not working. So now I have to do some work. I have to report the token thing in 127. But
then there's the
title.
visibility setting. Yeah, that one right there, and then see XQ token, and it opens up. So yeah,
almost certainly you could do a session colon whatever.
Or to Mark's point, you could use like a get off a query string, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
If it's or get or session, so that if it's there in the first
Sure.
place, it will be visible, and then it'll be sticky following you around after that.
Right. I can handle all the programming logic to get the proper token set to true or false. It was this screen that I'm seeing here that excites me a little bit, that I might be able to get to this particular page and set these properties in place. But the Nav XP is an app that I have used in years past in its current form. Is this something, Dale, that you drop onto a page, or do I go into my configuration and use the Nav XP that's may already be loaded? What would be the best way to start that process? Because again, the menus are it's just stock DNN with really no permissions on them on any of them, except all users can see these pages.
So I first of all, let me Patrick reminds me that it's something that gets incorporated into your theme. So if are you using Page Builder as the theme?
you
No,
can do
I'm not.
both. You can use it as a module, but you can also use it as a skin object. So yeah,
I see.
yep.
So it sounds like dragging it out, placing a module or using Page Builder and then start editing. It looks to me like you would probably flip to permission based and add a profile down here that would be your menu, and it could be you probably have to drag all the things that you want to be in your menu, and then probably you might want
Yes.
applying it to unauthenticated users and things like that. So you'll probably require some playing, but it looks like
Okay.
you're there. Nice.
Okay. Well, that's plenty of information for me to get started. I'll play with that. And yeah, obviously I was just kind of hoping that, yeah, sure, you just do this and it works perfect. But
Mm-hmm.
as we know with DNN, we're kind of at the mercy of how their pages are built and rendered and
Yeah,
the rule book on those.
but of course, there's a whole lot of things that kind of come included with DNN, and the fact that you've got menu and roles-based permission is terrific. But you just kind of have a use case that's a little outside what it was designed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. We need the DNN developers to put a condition property and allow tokens in that condition property, and we would just be
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, so now you're into needing custom tokens, and that's yet another thing. But good
Yeah.
question. What's next?
I
Well,
just as a side note, I just tested it and it worked with a query string param. So
nice.
Thank you, Patrick, and
yep.
welcome to the show again. Nice to see you.
Yep. Thanks.
Patrick's been here most every week. Not that I keep attendance. Okay. What's next? All right, I'm going to talk about some stuff here. This is where I was hoping to pick your brain a little bit. That we have on our next Low Code Cafe episode coming up at the end of the month, we've picked out a topic, something along the lines of low-code high performance, where we want to talk about performance things and patterns that work well and patterns that are bad. Python app or any language allows you to do things that are uh, not good design. So it was just kind of what's your favorite tips for things that a beginner should know about doing, or even experts should know about doing, developing apps and having high performance.
Don't use a token in a listing that goes and gets data.
Or maybe it's judiciously. Do you want to tell that story, or do you want me to tell the story?
Well, I'll tell the story, yeah. So have a listing, and it's based on a stored procedure to go get the data out of SQL. The stored procedure runs, very fast when run alone, and is trying to track down what was causing certain users to go really, really slowly, like minutes to load a page. And in the final analysis, it wound up that the listing was based on a stored procedure, which was fast, but inside the listing, I had a couple of columns that were token-based computed fields. And those columns, sometimes, for reasons I've not yet been able to diagnose just because of time constraints, those column tokens took an enormous amount of time. Got rid of those columns, and boom, it was quite, as fast as you would expect. And yes, that would be my tip. Don't do that.
The so the underlying thing there is that it's a great ability to be able to use a token within a listing, but if you use a token in a data field, then every row that gets displayed executes the token. If you if the token runs slowly, then the listing is going to run slowly. If the it, and so then you can figure out, perhaps you can do that work elsewhere, like within the original stored procedure. Um, Cache the token, that's another answer, but um, yes, you could. This is one of those things that might work on a system that has, if you're doing a data query, and it has low number of records, then you put it into production and it has a high number of records. It might have worked when you designed it, but doesn't work or gets worse over time. Yep. Um, on the other hand, there's a place for it. I have a client that is using um, Oracle and as a querying data, get data out of Oracle, and and then needs to match that with some data that's in SQL Server, and maybe there's a high performance way to do that. But from a very simple standpoint, being able to um, get the data back from Oracle and display it on the listing, and then use a token to get the little bit of additional information that he needed was an okay design pattern. But if it took a long time, then you'd have to look at doing it another way. Other things that you would definitely recommend to people.
I don't know if it comes under performance, but one of my standards is I've sort of built several little action forms that I pull into from common places into a form and set values and things like that so I don't have to keep reinitializing or redeveloping the same thing. I'll share a action form that might have a number of pre-inits or something to set things on it.
Mm. Um, just as an idea starter, one thing that if you're in action form, you've got to drop down and let's say it's SQL based or even server request based. Uh, if you have 5 items in the list, it's going to perform very quickly. If you have 10,000 items in the list, it might not perform at all. Um, it's got to run the query, and all that data has to be transferred to the browser in order uh, to render the drop down and have it those 1,000 items in there, whatever. So um, perhaps if you have something that has a very large amount of data, you might find another pattern. And this kind of brings me to mentioning we have a new action in 1.27 called pick item from list, which is similar to the old browse data or browse listing action, but it's been brought up into the current. But the idea is that you can uh, have a listing on the page that has lots and lots of data. It has the ability to um, only load when you need it. Listings can be made to be very efficient and filtering and searching and things like that. And then you click the row you want, and that's the answer. So sometimes you got to think outside the box, think about what you're asking it to do, and then do it a different way.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, another one that I play with is I have a table that has it's just 800,000 rows of random numbers, but uh, the idea is to have something trying to get away from this pattern where when you've got 100 records that everything seems to work very, very quickly, and then when you expand it to production size tables that it slows down. So um, anyway, when you have very high row counts that how you do things might impact how long it takes to do, and there might be better ways. We had a case yesterday where uh, on our hosted servers, any email bounce from anywhere ends up being logged, and we've been doing that since 2018. So we had a form that was showing all the bounces, and going back to 2018, every bounce from every client that's sending out emails um, is a significant amount of data. The query wasn't terribly efficient in the first place because there was some JSON within the records. Anyway, it was just taking, I don't know, more than 2, 3 minutes to load this listing. And so again, something that worked really, really well when it was a few hundred records got bad when there's 200,000. So um, you know, there's a happy ending to the story. It loads in under 5 seconds now. A combination of pre-filtering it, filtering for only we don't need to display bounces that happened in 2018. So let's focus on the bounces that happened in the last 3 months. Let's add index keys to the tables. Um, Make sure the query is well structured, only returning the things that we need to display, that kind of thing. Anybody think of anything else that they would add to this? I mean, I'm really asking. I want to make sure that I cover the cases that really happen in the world.
I'm more interested in seeing the presentation because I'm getting to the point where I have my first app that's actually going to have some volume. It's like,
Good. Well, whether whether live or in replay, I'm always good for uh, an hour's worth of entertainment. Um, there is just while we're here, there is one more thing in listings that I know I'm going to cover, which is if you're not aware, it's kind of one of those things that can get you when you're um, when you have a listing and however many rows that are being displayed, all of that data that's selected is going out to the browser, so it can it's used to fill the listing. So if you have columns that you're not using, the data still goes out to the browser. If those columns happen to be um, maybe you've got a JSON column with some some amount of huge data or whatever, it's still going out to the browser. So in a low transfer speed environment, or you're trying to display 100 rows and you've got um, hundreds of thousands of bytes in a column, and then it's being pushed out to the browser and you're not displaying it, it's going to drag down your performance. And yet, you could just as easily turn that column off. There's also ways to display that column if you really need it. Display it, excuse me, on demand versus have it there for every row, even though it's not being displayed but for one, that kind of thing. So,
And Dale, you're saying that if you have the column listed there, but even if you turned off all of its visibility for all device types and for detail view, if it's in the list, it's still going to be loaded. That's
correct.
yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah. So and I know that sometimes um, I know there's some nuance here, but sometimes even if you don't have something uh, pulled into the as a field in the listing on the fields tab, you can still use its token. Is the data in context even though the field's not added to the listing?
That's a great question. Let me see if I can find some. I'm just trying to find a listing here, and maybe one of the tools that I can mention today is to just look at what's going on the network tab to see what is there. So when you are on the network tab and you do a search, for example, you'll see that there is let me get lost here. Let me find my way. Uh, Here's what I was looking for. So there's a call to API dot ASHX, the get data method. And so this is where the listing gets filled up. And if you look at the response that comes back, um, this is showing you the JSON that the listing is consuming. And so, for example, in the results, you see uh, for every ID 1050101, you see all of the fields for that row and lots of properties for that row as well. So if the row contained huge data, it would, item by item, it's still transferring all that data. And then to Patrick's point, if we look at this listing, if it's listed here, it's definitely being transferred. Um, so even though you might turn off a all the visible on properties, and it's not visible on the listing, if it's in this data field list, it's still being transferred to the browser. But the question was, if you were making a button conditional on some value that's in the
Yeah,
list.
that's in the data source, but you don't pull it into the list of data fields.
And I haven't experimented with this. My suspicion is that it is it's going to have to transfer. So at least at the item button level. So I suspect that you're going to force it to be present. But that's with experimentation. Anyway. Good. Well, we'll play more with that during the episode, and maybe I'll have some answers on what we can do with that. If you think of one and you want to email that to me, I would certainly appreciate it. I want to cover all the good topics. Let me give you an update on some things that are going on within the product. We've done this last several times. Our development list, our Kanban list. These things that are crossed through, marked as done, those were things that were done last week. It just hasn't dropped off my list. So since last week, there is this new one, Bootstrap 5 Action Grid button, not updating in the responsive drop-down. So this is a case where this is related to a particular support case. Somebody was trying to use a group button, and the status as the user interacted with the listing and clicked buttons, that the button should have a different title. I think that was the case, or different appearance, and it wasn't being updated. So that one's fixed. We had some work done in Nav XP. This is the one Jerry was asking about a little while ago, where if you flipped to permissions based, that it was showing up with an invalid data source kind of error, which prevented anyone from using that. But now apparently whether we introduced a new bug or haven't fixed all the things necessary, that permissions thing that Patrick found working in 126 isn't in 127. So these are all 127 things that we're looking at, by the way. We are working on calendar view localization. So Spanish titles, for example, in a calendar, using the right days of the week, names, and things like that. And a couple of things that haven't started yet. This is one that I think Mark was hoping to have the ability to create a thumbnail when you're doing it under listings. We have a different support case for somebody who is using our field tooltip. The icon isn't rendering correctly. So that's another neat one. So things are in progress. Couple of new contributions to Campfire, which I think might be interesting. For anyone listening in replay, we have a website, campfire.plantanapp.com. Lots of examples there, and if you participate and or just ask for permission and promise not to break things, we can give you access to the site. So there was an item here that had bugged me for a long time, that this is the date picker, that if you well, we can just start by looking at when this loaded. This date picker without workaround fired 3 events at the time that the site loaded, and if you pick another date, it fires 2 events after that. And so that's unusual behavior. Most of our on change click logic doesn't doesn't fire off any, like on a text box, it doesn't fire off anything when you load the page, and then it fires once when you interact with it. We could, I'll get there in a second. The this one that I've redone, um, that's this one here, the date picker. Um, because it fires too many events, I've changed it so that it'll only fire one event when the page loads, so you can use it or not in its current form. And then when you pick a new date, it just fires once. So it's a if you're having trouble with the on-change click um, functionality of a date picker, or the date time picker should be the same, that this bit of JavaScript will help you out. Anybody ever fight with this before? So within a given field, there's bind expressions, and the on-change click is where you're going to interact with something, do some JavaScript to work with hey, they interacted with this field, I want to do something. And so this logic that's here will let you find the right place to do the form load events, or the true on-change click events. So that one's out there for anybody to take advantage of.
That's cool, Dale. Good information to have.
We have a ticket. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I have a question for you. If you could, can you look back at that JavaScript, the on-change click? I've run into this before. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but if you hover over, see that first warning on line 2? Okay, so I don't know if anybody's ever run into this. I don't think that Plantain app uses the ES6 version of JavaScript. And for the most part, it's fine. You can ignore these warnings, but every once in a while you try to do something where it will fail. Like, for instance, see that line 4, that set phase value equals, and then that the equals right-hand bracket. That's only available in ES6. And I've seen that had it cause problems for me in the past where it didn't actually evaluate properly. So just a heads up for folks out there that might be doing anything in JavaScript out there.
I've used that syntax successfully quite a bit.
Equal bracket.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have too, and I've forgotten exactly what the issue was, Patrick. But one particular time it just didn't work, and I was struggling to figure out why. And then I said, "All right, what's this ES6 baloney?" And my research assistant helped me out on that one and rewrote the code using ES5, and it worked like a champ.
Well, that's an interesting solution. I see that we are using CodeMirror to display this, and we've probably in the parameters told it that what we're trying to support, and so I don't know if these warnings are accurate, or whether we're now supporting some ES6 and CodeMirror hasn't been told that it's.
I've come to just ignore those ES6 warnings, and I haven't had any issues. So maybe I'm.
And I think part of the issue has to do with like this that I have here, we have this ability to use tokens to designate a field name, and tokens are not part of ES6. It doesn't understand what that means, and so it's trying to interpret it using standard JavaScript, and because our tokens don't mean anything to it, it's throwing this warning. So I'm not sure we're ever going to completely get rid of the warnings, but it's a good if it's not behaving the way that you want it to, that's certainly something to investigate.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, would that be something that's browser based so that it might work for you, but might not work for somebody else? Or is that Onchange running in the server at that point?
The Unchange is running on the browser. So I would assume you could run into compatibility issues browser to browser. There was another one. I had a client that was interested in being able to download a file in ANSI format instead of by default field files are UTF-8, and so I made a token that allows you to convert a UTF-8 to ANSI, which is I guess also Windows. There's a particular number that goes with it. It's another ANSI is another name for a Windows 1252 or something like that. But most people don't care. This particular client needed an ANSI file because it was going to something that it was expecting encoding in ANSI. So this is a workaround. And then I have the task to write up in various places where we create files. I think this one is being done with save file to disk or send file for download. Let's see what it's using. So there was it was being created through our save file action and save. I'm going to write up the ability to add an encoding format option in here so that you could have a drop down and say what you want it to be, and that would save people from having to use the workaround, but at least again knowing that there's a workaround available. So that's 2 contributions on the website.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the previous thing you were just doing with the time, the date picker, not as sophisticated as that. It's a lot simpler question, I think. Just happened yesterday. A client called and said they've got a little form that just sets the date when something happens. And so I've got the date picker in there. She couldn't get the thing to do the date that she wanted at 12:01 a.m. And I looked and saw that every time that we put a date in there where we set the time to be 12:01 a.m., it put it as the date prior at 11:01 p.m. So it's obviously something to do with maybe daylight savings time. So I'm wondering what I'm doing wrong with that date time picker to get the right date in there, and how do I tell it that it should check daylight saving time or not? Or is that something that's not the issue?
Well, you, this is a proverbial can of worms, Don.
Yeah.
Just to verify, the issue that you're having, the picker lets you pick 12:01, but then when it gets saved in the database, you're seeing some other value.
Yes, right.
Okay.
In fact, you're always, if I put any other time in there, it will put an hour earlier. So that's what it's
Well,
doing.
there's there's a couple of possibilities, but the main one is that I believe daylight savings time is the culprit. And one of the things that is just very hard to deal with is that the um, daylight savings time isn't taken into consideration. Um, the way when you store a date time in SQL, there's no way to express what uh, um, it when it converts to UTC, right? It's being stored as UTC time, which when you view it back locally, it's being converted back to your time. Well, then there's this whole thing that goes on with daylight savings time that uh, depending on let me do the short version of this. I have seen this happen where when when you are in a summer time zone and you set a date in a winter time zone at that time, that uh, it adjusts the date to it because it doesn't account for the time zone, and um, so
That seems
it
to be what I'm doing.
okay.
What
And
I'm
there is I believe this is a kind of an inherent problem with um, only using UTC and not taking and then think about it. Time zone is kind of relative, right? If you're doing an international application and you have certain areas that don't observe time zone changes, for example. So how is that represented on the calendar? Versus if you're looking at it, if you set it for 6 o'clock New York time, and then you're looking at it in some completely other time zone, what should it display? And
Yeah, that sounds like a bigger problem. For me, it's purely local time.
okay, and so I have worked up a solution to this, and maybe someday when I'm very brave, I'll show it publicly. But if you open a ticket and want help with it, I'll be happy to try. The solution essentially is to not, if you really need it to be at a particular time on a particular date, irregardless or without regard to time zone, then it's almost better to split your date and time storage and then explicitly handle it when you're using it. It's a little bit involved, and it's but I do have a solution someplace.
Oh, okay. Well, I could certainly do that. Grab the date and the time separately, put the two different fields, and I use a just a date picker, and then what time do you want? Or just actually, I know it's always going to be 12:01 for her, for this client, so I could just put the date in there.
Yep. Have her select the date and then store it in such a way, or if you know that, then you just do a date storage, and then it comes down to the way that you consume it. But it's um, anything having to do with date, time, or international is can be hair pulling at times. But
Hmm.
and Patrick is shaking his head yes. So
Yes, yes, I am.
um,
Thanks.
sure. There have been a number of documentation updates since last time, but one of them I'll just mention. I'm going to mention two of these really quick. Uh, Group radio boxes is an interesting feature that, or rather, was an older feature that did something like this, where you had three different, uh, being able to put the titles just kind of in one column above a set of radio boxes. We're not going to continue that functionality in Bootstrap 5. So that's now marked as obsolete. I think there's a very low number of people that use it, but if you do use it, you'll have to switch to, and we got some suggestions on how to just using radio boxes with horizontal. You can get much the same effect, but if it happens to impact you, know in advance that that's been marked as obsolete. Um, there's a new feature. Patrick spent a lot of time in a low-code cafe talking about our Razer script experimental functionality, which is very cool. But we now have documentation that explains the different things, how to use it, and what's different, and where the files are stored. And some very nice script examples of that shows you all the different objects and how you can use content out of them, how you can see what's all the different pieces that are or
Cool.
components that are in a module. So, for example, if you were to take this script and copy it and then put it into a token, this is going to display all of your module properties that are available. And I have one for each of, there's a portal object, a tab or page object, uh, a user object. So being able to dump all that stuff out, so lots of, or being able to use functions or helpers. So lots of great examples that are all tested to work. So that's
And I'll just real quick put a plug in for this feature because right now at USPA we're on kind of a hold on all updates because we have an important thing going on the site right now, and we want that to finish before we do any more updates. So, but meanwhile, I'm implementing something with Razer script, and I'm discovering that that it would be much easier if I could use the new Razer script experimental token type. It would have saved me time. So it really does help this new type of Razer script token.
at at 100,000 feet level, our existing Razer script functionality was a particular dialect from many years ago. I don't know how many years ago, and then this is a current dialect. So you're have a lot more features and better syntax, and now the ability to open it up in an editor that understands the syntax. So there's lots of advantages.
The ability to use functions is really huge. Which
Yeah. We've updated our phone field, so if you use the phone field, you might want to take a look at that. Meaning broader. We use components from other vendors. The underlying field type has had gone through a lot of development, and so we've updated and used the most current version. And we've done some updates in our workflow user interface, so you can read all about those kind of things in the documentation. We still didn't, I'm going to have to put a pin in it there. We didn't get to community forum, but I'll do that. I'll put that on the front next time so that we don't skip it. We skipped it last week as well. Any last thoughts before I close out the recorded portion of our episode? Okay. Well, thank you for joining us for Low Code Campfire today. We hold this every Friday, so hopefully you'll join us again. And if you have a few minutes, stick around for Afterglow. See you next week.